The uniform is already on the hook. You hung it there an hour ago. Now you're sitting on the edge of a cot in a West Point dormitory at 11:47 at night, looking at it. Tomorrow, a general pins gold bars onto your shoulders. Tomorrow, your mother cries in the bleachers. Your father stands perfectly still, jaw tight, the way he stood at every important moment. Like stillness is the only container he has for what he feels. But tonight, it's just you and the uniform. And a question you haven't said out loud. Do you actually understand what you just signed up for? You don't. That's not a failure. That's the starting point. Fort Moore, Georgia, August. The heat is not weather here. It is pressure. It sits on your sternum from the moment the plane door opens and does not lift for 8 weeks. You complete the Infantry Basic Officer Leader course. Land navigation in the dark, weapons qualification in the rain, 4.5 hours of sleep. Graded on everything, including how you respond when you are graded poorly. What the course actually teaches you has nothing to do with the syllabus. It teaches you the distance between confidence and competence. You arrived with one, you leave beginning to understand the other. Your first unit, 3rd Infantry Division. 35 soldiers handed to you on a Tuesday morning in a motor pool that smells like diesel and red clay. You give your first remarks as their lieutenant. 3 sentences in, you notice Staff Sergeant Marcus Tran in the back row. 9 years in. Combat patch from Ramadi. Arms crossed, not hostile. Waiting. 2 days later, during a patrol rehearsal, he stops the exercise. Asks you a technical question about call for fire procedures in front of the entire platoon. A question you should know. You don't know it. He waits. He does not rescue you. He gives you every second of the silence, and you get through it by acknowledging what you don't know and stating what you'll do about it. That night, 3 hours with the field manual. Next morning, you find Tran before formation and walk him through the correct answer, step by step. He nods once. Good. That's all. Trust at this level is not given. It is witnessed. Built at 0500 running the same road as your soldiers before they expect you to. Your soldiers are cataloging every single one. 6 months in, orders come down. Iraq, Mosul Province. Something happens in your chest when you read them. You fold the paper, pocket it. Your face does not move. Tran is watching. Baghdad, February 2007. The air has a taste. Diesel, dust, something without a name that you will spend years trying to describe accurately and never quite manage. Route clearance on main supply route Tampa. IED's ambushes. Long stretches of nothing followed by 30 seconds where everything happens at once. 3 weeks in, your lead vehicle hits a pressure plate. The MRAP lifts off the ground. When it lands, everyone inside is alive. You stand at the edge of the crater. Your hands are completely still. Not because you are composed, because you haven't figured out yet what your body is supposed to do with what just happened. Tran stands 10 feet away. He watches your hands. He doesn't forget it. 13 months later, you come home. Lighter, quieter. Certain in a way that has no anxiety in it about things you were only theorizing before. The promotion takes 45 seconds, 18 months of service, no catastrophic failures. A silver bar replaces a gold one. The ceremony is smaller than a staff meeting. Life continues. Your responsibilities do not stay the same. Kunar Province, Afghanistan. 2009. You are no longer leading 35 men. You are embedded in the nerve center of a 600-person battalion, coordinating aviation assets, synchronizing indirect fire, tracking multiple platoons across 200 kilometers of terrain that does not forgive errors of any size, mountains that rise like walls on every side, valleys so narrow helicopters fly single file. The Korengal is 30 kilometers south. You know what happened there. Everyone knows. Nobody says the name more than necessary. Your job is translation. You take the commander's intent and render it into orders other people can execute. You brief Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hale at 0600 every morning. Exactly what he needs, nothing he doesn't. His time is a rationed resource. Your role is to protect it. One night, a company commander calls troops in contact from a ridgeline above the Petch River Valley. 2 wounded. Fire from 3 directions. Rotary wing assets 22 minutes out. You are on the radio for 19 minutes straight. When it's over, you realize your jaw aches. You don't remember clenching it. You haven't exhaled properly in all 19 minutes. The soldiers on that ridgeline are alive. Hale doesn't mention it to you directly. He tells the S3 Major at breakfast. The S3 Major tells you at lunch. That is how recognition moves at this level, sideways, delayed. You learn to receive it that way. Here is what this level teaches you. Leading people and managing systems are different disciplines. They fail in different directions. They require different instincts. Most officers are good at one. The ones who go far develop both without ever confusing them. It is a reason for precision. You are signing a readiness report on a Tuesday afternoon when his name surfaces without warning. No trigger you can identify. No sound, no smell, no particular light through the window. Just the name, arriving the way it always arrives. Without permission, without announcement. Atkins, 21 years old. Dayton, Ohio. 2 years in the Army. Killed by a sniper's round during a cordon and search outside a village called Jerry. The call was correct. The tactics were sound. The investigation confirms it 3 times. You made no error that morning. That could have changed what happened. You know this. The knowing does not help. In his personal effects, the chaplain finds a piece of paper. Folded 4 times, handwritten. A name, Camille, and a date. His daughter's estimated due date. She was born while he was in the pre-deployment pipeline. He had not yet received a photograph. There was no photograph to carry, just a name. Just a date. In pen, on paper, folded 4 times and kept in his left breast pocket. Emily, you write the letter to his family yourself. You write it 4 times. The first 3 are trying to explain something that cannot be explained, and you have confused explanation with comfort. The 4th version does not explain anything. It only says what he was, what you saw. You send it knowing it will never be enough. That is not a reason not to send it. Sergeant Major Clarence Booker finds you in the operations center the following week. 2 hours past midnight. You are reviewing a mission timeline you have already reviewed 3 times. He stands in the doorway and says, "Sir, you're not second-guessing yourself. You're punishing yourself. Those look identical from the outside. They are not the same." He leaves before you can respond. You sit with that for a long time. You run 43 combat missions over 7 months. You lose 1 soldier, 1. That number does not get smaller with time. It does not get easier to say. What changes is what you do with the weight of it. A commander who forgets what loss costs begins spending it cheaply. You decide in a room by yourself after Booker's words have had time to settle that you will not be that commander. Not as punishment, as obligation. You come home. Every objective reached, every soldier accounted for, except the one who never stops counting. You honor that by being better, not by being done. There is a moment at a family dinner 6 weeks after you leave company command when someone asks what you do in the Army. You open your mouth. For the first time in 11 years, you do not have a short answer. Not because you don't know the job, because the job does not translate into 1 sentence anymore. The identity you built in Georgia heat and Kandahar dust, commander, leader, officer in charge, does not transfer cleanly into a staff position. You have to dismantle it, construct something else in its place. That process is harder than anything on the officer evaluation report. Nobody grades you on it. Nobody sees you doing it. Fort Cavazos, Texas, home of the 1st Cavalry Division. You are the Brigade S3, primary operations officer for a 4,500 soldier brigade combat team. Multiple battalions, aviation, artillery, a logistics tail that stretches for kilometers. You synchronize the actions of all of them. You command none of them. Before this, Command and General Staff College, Fort Leavenworth. 10 months. 1,100 officers from across the American military and 130 allied nations. You study operational art, how large forces are designed, moved, and sustained across time and distance. You write a 15,000-word thesis on the Unbar Awakening. You graduate in the top fifth of your class. That goes in your file. Everything goes in your file now. A planning conference, 2014. You spend 4 hours in a room and say nothing. You are there to observe. You carry knowledge about northern Iraqi terrain that no one else in that room has. No one asks, the plan is approved. You identify a gap in the route security logic, document it, send the memo up. No reply. 14 days later, the deploying unit adjusts their corridor for exactly the reason in your memo. Your name does not appear in the after-action report. At 01:30 on a Thursday, the brigade commander appears in the doorway of the operations center. CENTCOM needs a route clearance operational plan within 6 hours. The request lands on your desk. You work through the night, terrain analysis, aviation deconfliction, logistics staging, rules of engagement parameters, risk mitigation across 3 phases. At 0700, you brief it to 3 general officers on a secure video call. Approved without revision. Afterward, 4 words from the brigade commander. Good work, Major Calloway. 4 words. You will remember them longer than most speeches. Praise at this level is rationed by design. Scarcity is what gives it weight. Influence without authority is the hardest skill in the military. You command no soldiers. But the quality of your thinking determines the safety of thousands of people you will never personally meet. That is a different kind of responsibility than command. And in some ways, it is harder. Because no one can see you carrying it. Not even you until much later. The night before you assume command, you read personnel files. Not all 800, but enough. 14 soldiers currently in the behavioral health system. 23 open disciplinary actions awaiting review. 6 recently returned from long deployments, with no follow-on health assessment on file. You read until 0200. You are not looking for problems to fix. You are trying to understand the shape of what you are about to be responsible for. The ceremony the next morning is at Joint Base Lewis McChord. You accept the battalion colors on the parade field, a transfer of responsibility dating to the Civil War. 3 seconds of silence before the band resumes. You feel the weight in your hands and in your chest simultaneously. 2 years. You know this going in. 24 months to do everything, fix everything, build everything. Then someone else takes the flag, and you become the thing this battalion was before you arrived. The first thing you do is walk the barracks alone. No aide. No sergeant major at your shoulder. You check facilities, equipment, hallways, faces. You eat in the dining facility 3 times your first week. You say less than you want to. You are listening for the things people don't say when leadership is in the room. Your command sergeant major is Raymond Solano. 22 years in, 6 deployments. He knows every soldier by name, family situation, and professional trajectory. He says nothing quotable on your first day. He observes. He continues observing for 3 weeks. At the end of the 3rd week, after a planning session that runs long, he falls into step beside you in the parking lot at dusk and asks one question. Not about tactics. Not about readiness scores. About a leadership decision you made 2 weeks ago that he doesn't think you handled exactly right. You answer honestly. He disagrees. You discuss it for 8 minutes in the dark. It is one of the most useful conversations of your career. Your battalion deploys to Poland in 2019. Operation Atlantic Resolve, NATO deterrence along the eastern flank. You run joint exercises with Polish army units across terrain that absorb some of the most devastating land warfare in the last century. You can feel that sometimes when formations move through a certain kind of field. Weight coming up through the ground. You are not fighting. You are preventing fighting. The distinction matters even when it is invisible to everyone watching from home. One night, your chaplain finds a 19-year-old private from rural Alabama sitting alone in a supply closet at 0200. The private is alive. He gets treatment. 6 months later, he re-enlists. Tells the retention in an SCO it was the first place that didn't let him disappear. You relinquish command after 23 months. Highest readiness scores in the brigade. Above average retention. At the ceremony, Solano shakes your hand. 22 years of judgment compressed into 4 seconds of grip. He doesn't speak. He doesn't need to. The war in Ukraine began on a Thursday. By Friday morning, the briefing on your desk had changed. By Sunday, the mission had changed. Nobody asked if you were ready. Readiness at this level is not a question. It is an assumption the institution makes, and your job is to continuously justify. 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team, 1st Infantry Division, Fort Riley, Kansas. M1A2. Abrams tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles, Paladin howitzers, an engineering battalion. A logistics tail that extends for kilometers. Your signature moves millions in resources. Your decisions shape careers. Your name is known at the Pentagon, not famous. Known. That distinction matters. Before this command, the Army War College at Carlisle. 1 year studying grand strategy, national security policy, the relationship between military force and political objectives. You write your strategic research project on great power competition and armored warfare in Eastern Europe. It will prove more relevant than anyone in the seminar predicted. Your brigade deploys to Romania in February 2022, weeks after the invasion. NATO's eastern flank shifts from theoretical to physical overnight. You coordinate with Romanian land forces, manage forward operating positions across multiple sites. Brief 4-star generals and a Deputy Secretary of Defense who arrives unannounced at the forward element. The war is 400 kilometers away. On clear nights when the wind moves east, the air has a different quality. You notice it every time. You don't mention it to anyone. One afternoon, a Romanian colonel walks you to a field outside his battalion's billeting area. He stops, looks at the ground. "My grandfather survived this field," he says. 1944. He doesn't add anything. You don't respond. There is nothing to add. Some ground carries weight that no intelligence summary can measure. You stood on that weight. You felt it come up through your boots. That evening, a Romanian general asks you over dinner, "Do you believe deterrence actually works?" You are quiet for a moment, not thinking of an answer, choosing which honest answer to give. "I believe the alternative is worse." He nods. Outside the window, American and Romanian soldiers run a joint night movement exercise. Boots in the mud, radios crackling, 2 armies. 1 line. That is what deterrence actually looks like. Not a doctrine paper, not a speech. Boots moving together in the dark, a long way from any camera. The notification arrives by email, not a phone call, not a meeting. An email delivered at 06:14 on a Wednesday. You read it once, you put your phone face down on the desk, you sit for approximately 90 seconds, then you get up and continue the morning. Selected from 400 colonels, 40 chosen, under 10%. That is how the Army delivers its largest moments. Efficiently without ceremony, until the ceremony can be arranged. You have learned to receive things this way. The wait comes later when there is time for it. Deputy Commanding General for Operations, 18th Airborne Corps, Fort Liberty, North Carolina, the Army's Strategic Contingency Force, designed to deploy anywhere on Earth within 18 hours, 88,000 soldiers across multiple divisions. The scale is genuinely difficult to hold in your mind all at once. You learn not to try. You hold it in sections. By 0600, you have read 3 intelligence summaries and 2 readiness reports. By 0800, you have attended 2 briefings. By noon, you have spoken to 3 2-star generals and a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense on a secure video call. You travel constantly. Seoul for readiness inspections, Brussels for NATO coordination, the Pentagon for budget hearings that will determine how many helicopters a division can field 2 years from now. The paradox of this level: the more soldiers your decisions affect, the fewer people in any given room will tell you the unvarnished truth. Everyone has run their words through a filter before they reach you. This is not dishonesty, it is institutional gravity. It pulls information into shapes that are easier to present. In Seoul, between sessions at a readiness conference, a Korean general takes you aside. In your honest assessment, he says, is the United States Army prepared for a peer conflict? You pause, not because you don't have an answer, because the honest answer requires 90 seconds to compress into something useful, and it changes depending on domain, theater, and how you define the terms. You give him the best version you have. He listens. He nods once. On the flight home, you think about that pause, about what it means that the most fundamental question in your profession has 12 true answers, about how much complexity disappears every time someone speaks with confidence in a press briefing. One morning, your aide brings you coffee and asks without thinking, "Sir, do you ever miss just leading soldiers?" You pause again. What you miss is not the simplicity. It is the certainty, the clarity of a formation, a mission, a defined objective. At this level, the objectives are real, but the edges are permanent blur. The accountability is total, but the feedback is delayed by months, sometimes years. Every day, you tell him, but not the way you mean. He writes it down. You notice. You hope he keeps it. Your phone is on the nightstand. It has been on the nightstand every night for 6 years. You have trained yourself to wake fully in under 10 seconds. You do not remember the last time you woke up slowly? You do not remember the last time waking up slowly was an option. Your family stopped commenting on it. That silence is its own category of sacrifice. Commanding General, 82nd Airborne Division. 18,000 paratroopers on permanent global response force status. Ready to deploy within 18 hours, any direction, any threat, indefinitely. The division does not rest. It breathes in rotations. So do you. Last May, your youngest daughter graduated from college. You watched it on a laptop in a command post in Germany, the Wi-Fi cutting in and out. She found the camera in the crowd and waved. You waved back, alone in a room full of communications equipment, surrounded by people, completely alone in the specific way that moment required. The wave felt like the loneliest gesture you had ever made. A brigade deploys to Eastern Europe in 2024. You manage them from Fort Liberty, 8,000 kilometers away, while maintaining readiness of forces stateside and preparing a second brigade for potential follow-on deployment. You brief the Army Chief of Staff twice weekly. Your assessments inform decisions made by people whose names appear in news cycles. An ordinary afternoon, a readiness report lands on your desk. Accurate, professionally written, deeply concerning. Systemic maintenance shortfall in rotary wing assets. Supply chain disruption upstream. If uncorrected in 60 days, Global Response Force certification is at risk. You call 3 people simultaneously through your aide. The Aviation Brigade Commander, the Logistics Chief, your Deputy Commanding General. The problem is resolved in 47 days. Not because you solved it, because you identified it clearly, named it without softening it, and moved the right people into position. That is what command looks like at this level. Not heroism, precision. The math works out. The math always works out. But 3 of the people you mobilized to fix it missed Thanksgiving with their families. You made the right call. The right call and the whole story are not the same thing. At this level, you are accountable for both, even when only one appears in the report. 3 stars. Deputy Commanding General, United States Army Forces Command. Responsible for the training, readiness, and mobilization of over 700,000 active duty and reserve soldiers inside the continental United States. You haven't personally led a formation in over a decade. Some days that fact sits quietly. Other days it settles on you like weather coming in low and staying. The temptation at this level is abstraction. The slow drift from these are people toward this is a system. It happens the way erosion happens. Not in moments you can identify, but in the accumulation of days when the human cost of a policy never appears on the same page as the budget savings it produces. You fight it with specificity. Once a month, unannounced, you visit a different installation. No entourage. You eat in the dining facility. You find junior NCOs and ask them what the Army is getting wrong. You listen without explaining, without defending, without taking notes in front of them. On one of these visits, a 26-year-old staff sergeant looks at you across a table at Fort Campbell and says, "Sir, the evaluation system is driving out everyone worth keeping. The people who are good at the checklist and the people who are good at leading soldiers are not the same people. We keep promoting the first group. You know this. The data confirms it. You have seen the retention trends for years. But hearing it from a 26-year-old with flour on his sleeve at 1300 on a Tuesday, that lands differently than a slide deck. It always does." The memories from earlier levels do not feel like nostalgia at this level. Tran and the silence he didn't fill. Atkins and the folded paper with only a name and a date. The private from Alabama who re-enlisted because someone built conditions instead of just building systems. Those are not stories. They are the reason none of the abstraction is allowed to win. One evening your aide, 28 years old, looks exactly like you did at that age, asks what the hardest part of the job is. Knowing that the most important decisions you'll ever make, you tell him, are the ones nobody sees you making. He writes it down. You notice. You hope he keeps it. The morning after the ceremony, you wake at 0500. Force of habit. 37 years of 0500. You lie in the dark. No briefings. No secure video call. No aid at the door. The silence is total and completely unfamiliar, and you realize this specific silence is the most disorienting thing you have experienced since the pressure plate in 2007. 4 stars. Senate confirmation. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs pinned them himself. Your mother, 84, watched from a wheelchair in the front row. Your father was not there. Heart attack 3 years ago, 2 weeks after you made Lieutenant General, 2 weeks after a handshake in a hospital hallway that finally broke open into something that had no name until it was over, and then had every name at once. You gave his eulogy in dress uniform. You held it together through the service, through the reception, through the drive to the airport, on the highway. Alone, you didn't. Commanding General, United States Army Forces Command, 700,000 soldiers, a budget measured in billions, a mission that never pauses. The weight you felt when the battalion colors were in your hands, that 3 seconds of silence before the band resumed. It never left. It just grew until it became indistinguishable from the person carrying it. One evening, past 2100, reviewing a force structure proposal that would eliminate 2 brigade combat teams. 8,000 soldiers, their families, their communities. You sit with it for a long time. You think about a motor pool in Georgia and a staff sergeant who didn't fill in the silence. A folded piece of paper with only a name and a date. A supply closet in Poland at 0200 and a 19-year-old who was still alive because someone built conditions instead of just building systems. You open the document. You begin writing, not approval, not rejection. A recommendation that requires the human cost and the strategic rationale to appear on the same page. Because you have learned, over 37 years across 10 levels, through everything this institution asked you to carry, that the math and the people are not separate problems. They never were. 4 years later, you retire at Fort Liberty. Paratroopers in formation, a band, an honor guard. The post commander reads your service record aloud, and it sounds like someone else's life until the final paragraph. Then it doesn't. The folded flag goes not to you, but to your wife. 11 moves in 37 years. 2 children raised in the margins of a life largely claimed before she entered it. She receives it without flinching. She earned it before you did. You tell her that at dinner, a small restaurant. Just the 2 of you for the first time in what feels like years. She puts her hand over yours on the table, holds it there. 37 years of everything neither of you ever said out loud, held without pressure in 4 square inches of contact. You didn't deserve it. You take it anyway. The next morning, 0500, force of habit. You lie in the quiet and you think about what you would tell the 22-year-old sitting on the edge of a cot at 11:47 at night, looking at a uniform on a hook, asking a question they don't know how to finish. Not, it gets easier. It doesn't. Not, you'll figure it out. You'll figure out enough. Enough is not the same thing. What you'd tell them is this. Every level asks you to surrender something: comfort, certainty. Time with people whose patience you haven't earned, but who give it anyway. Give it without keeping score. Give it without resentment, because what you receive in return is not a promotion, not a star, not a ceremony. What you receive is a life with weight in it. A life where the decisions mattered, where the people were real, where the cost of getting it wrong was never abstract. In the quiet of 0500, no mission forming, no formation waiting, that is what you have. And somewhere tonight, a 22-year-old is sitting on the edge of a cot, looking at a uniform on a hook, asking the same question you asked. The answer exists. They just have to live all the way through it to understand why.